From ancient times, various cultures around the world have created unique spiritual and religious customs that have been passed on from generation to generation. While these religions appear to have been created independently and certainly vary in style, consistent themes remain apparent throughout all of them. In this video, we will discuss and we'll take a look at how religions first formed in ancient times, why so many cultures around the world created religions, and how they evolved over the humanity's long history. Modern human beings have existed on Earth for approximately 300,000 years. Over this time, they went through various cycles of trial and error to learn the difference between what satisfied their hunger and what could potentially kill them. Our ancestors of the Stone Age lived with a mindset that was truly fixated on survival. They searched for water, built short-term shelters, and if they were lucky, enjoyed a fire and a hot meal at the end of the night. But did they follow a specific religion? No doubt the various ancient groups of human beings on our planet had some kind of religious belief system that they followed. The question of why religion became such a widespread part of humanity's history is still up for debate. This idea has sparked the curiosity of scholars, anthropologists, and archaeologists for centuries. When humanity first decided to become spiritual or religious, in a sense, it still had no clear answer. Yet archaeological evidence has suggested that religious activity may have occurred as early as 50,000 years ago. While they may not have been as extensive or as encompassing as our modern beliefs, evidence has shown that even our distant human relatives, the Neanderthals, cared for their dead. They may have even pondered if there was a place beyond this world where they traveled upon their passing. This continued on with our oldest Homo sapien ancestors, who began to wonder and even begin to question if there could be a way to enhance good fortune, talk with the elements, and, in turn, bring about prosperous agricultural periods by honoring such forces of nature. This would be the beginning of religion as we know it. The first things worshipped. Following the end of the last ice age, a new era had fallen upon the earth. Humans could again spread out around the vast world and create lasting settlements on arable lands and close to bodies of fresh water. This Neolithic revolution, which established a widespread agricultural lifestyle, led to a settled lifestyle for people around the world. The religious practices that occurred during this era started around 10,000 years ago, clearly portray a worship of their ancestors, while holding on to the earlier worship of the sun, moon, stars, and nature. Religious sites consist of standing stones aligned with the movement of celestial bodies were erected all across the world, from Europe to South Africa. If we compare Stonehenge in Britain and the Adams calendar in Mpumalanga, we can observe various similarities. It's possible both sites acted as ritual areas and megalithic calendars. The Neolithic agricultural societies would have gathered around such structures during winter and summer solstice to pay tribute to their various deities. During this Neolithic period, we also see a special reverence paid to females and, more specifically, their fertility. Women were worshipped for their ability to bring forth an abundant harvest and were even revered for being a source of creation. A switch over to monotheism. Towards the end of the Stone Age, we see various tribes around the world implement the use of idols at their place of worship. Some were simple standing stones, often engraved with symbols. Others would have been wooden statues, and it is possible that even in the homes, small figurines carved from rock and other materials were seen as sacred or religious. Whether or not the idols themselves even truly represented God to the various cultures around the world, or more so, were these idols merely symbolic representations of a universal force of creation or God? Our culture that seems to have represented the latter was the ancient Druids of modern Great Britain and Ireland. In ancient times, these wise people and leaders of the community were considered master astronomers and some of the world's first scientists. They had a great understanding of theology and were even considered pioneers in the advent of spiritual teachings. A detailed video about Druids can be found on our channel. While some have suggested that Druids were pagans or worshippers of idols, one great Masonic author, Manly P. Hall, had other ideas about the true nature of the Druidic belief system. One of the most revered works, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, Manly P. Hall wrote, "Not only was the mistletoe sacred as symbolic of the universal medicine, or panacea, but also because of the fact that it grew upon the oak tree. Through the symbol of the oak, the Druids worshipped the supreme deity. Therefore, anything growing on the tree was held sacred by them. Thus, in simplistic terms, Manly P. Hall believes the Druids worshipped a great deity or god through the idol of the oak tree. This idea is similar to that of what we see in various Native American traditions, which speak of the Great Spirit, or as a premortal creative force and deity. Again, this is a tradition observed in Hinduism, where we have Brahman, the unknowable and eternal origin, recognized as the cause and foundation of all existence. It's clear that by the earliest partitions of the Bronze Age, cultures from Asia to Western Europe and beyond to the Americas had a universal idea of one creative force that was ranked as a singular deity above all else. What we may witness here in ancient times is a form of monotheism, yet not quite as strict as it would become in later cultures. But was this already happening around the world? Not exactly. If we look at one of the most advanced cultures in the ancient world, Egypt, they were not ready to make a switch to a more secular and unified form of religion, often called monotheism. One of the greatest stories in Egyptian history is that of the pharaoh Akhenaten, who ruled during the 18th dynasty of Egypt's New Kingdom. He was often called the heroic king for this dramatic change in the Egyptian spiritual system. Akhenaten tried to move Egypt away from a polytheistic form of religion to a monotheistic one. However, this didn't go down well with the priests of Egypt, and it seems they were able to oust the king along with many of his followers. Around the same period, we saw the rise of other monotheistic religions in that of Moses, the Hebrew patriarch, and his Torah. While some alternative theorists have suggested that Moses was, in fact, the heretic king Akhenaten, others see this as a mere coincidence. The timelines tend to cross over, and some legends have Moses as an exile in Egypt. Nonetheless, Moses is often seen as the first leader of the Hebrew people, who gave them a compiled version of a monotheistic God's commands. During this era, the Israelites began worshiping the God they called Yahweh, the evolution of religion. Following the dramatic rise of the Torah and the splintering of the original Hebraic region in the individual Abrahamic regions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, we saw a worldwide phenomenon beginning to take place. Just before this, we did have groups of what some have called pre-Christian religions, such as the Essence, a mysterious Jewish sect that followed the Torah. Nonetheless, with the growth of Abrahamic regions, many of the ancient polytheistic religions of the world were dwindling in size, and monotheism became a dominant force in the world of religion. There are a few reasons for this. Firstly, as we previously mentioned, monotheism did not emerge with the Abrahamic religions and existed in a more passive way in the spiritual belief system of the Druids, Native Americans, and Hindus, among many others. But as these Abrahamic religions spread, with their laws prohibiting any kind of idol worship, we saw a reduction in the reverence of nature alongside God and, instead, a sole dedication to the one creative force. As this was already a fairly common theme in many of the ancient religions around the world, it didn't take much for the newer Abrahamic religions to convince the people that the worship of their one God was the best chance they had for salvation in the afterlife. It's even been suggested that Christians didn't begin to recognize themselves as pure monotheists until at least the 4th century, long after its establishment. But it's important to remember that even with the dramatic spread of Abrahamic religions, all of the common folk who had converted either by choice or force didn't necessarily see themselves as purely monotheistic. Yes, they now thought the one God held control over all of creation, but they didn't deny the existence of their older pantheon of deities. Various cultures, especially those of Western Europe, including the British Isles, molded various aspects of the Druidic traditions with modern Christianity, forming a rather beautiful spiritual belief system. We see pre-Christian symbols such as the sun cross being utilized in a Christian-era carvings, and the Book of Kells has remained one of the most fascinating manuscripts ever written. A step back in religious idea. Abrahamic religions based on monotheism have remained the fastest-growing religion for the past 1,500 years. Yet over the last 100 years, we have seen a slow rise in the return of attentive religious practices. Many people have returned to the older worship of nature, astronomy, and even the sun. Neo-Druidism has taken off in Britain. Hinduism and Buddhism have remained prevalent in Asia, and the worship of the Great Spirit by the Native Americans hasn't dwindled. Whether or not we will see a return to the spiritual idea that we are not living in nature, but instead a part of it, only time will tell. But with the atrocious crimes committed by churches and their leaders across all the Abrahamic religions, it seems that organized religion has and will continue to dwindle as people look for more personal ways to practice their spiritual beliefs. A return to the recognition of a great universal force, or spirit, from which all things manifest would certainly fit in line with many of the world's religions, without the aspect of control that often comes with organized beliefs.